Hello everybody, this is the Daydreamer with Daydreams and Nightmares, and this is going to be my video entry into MrRigarmotris and Davis Comic Finds 200 subscriber contest. They have had this out for a while, and I know a lot of people have put in entries, but I figured this is one that takes a little bit of thought and effort, so I wanted to make sure I got this all figured out as we go. They themselves are giving out prizes, and they each have their own questions. You only have to make one video for it, and I will link down below their channel so you can go check out their portions of this giveaway. I'm going to start with I'm supposing is the harder of the two, which is MrRigarmotris. He wanted to know what your favorite comic book movie soundtrack was, and you're not allowed to use the 1989 Batman, and that would be one of my choices. So he said if you're going to do that, give him some other choices. Big fan of the Crow movie and the soundtrack, which is also based on a comic book. And also in the 90s, since most of these questions revolve around characters and storylines, around the 90s, also Tank Girl was actually a pretty good soundtrack from the 90s, comic book related as well. Second, what is your favorite 90s comic story arcs? You're looking at one of them, and actually technically this is November of 1989. I'm hoping it's close enough. This is Uncanny X-Men number 251, and I thought this seemed kind of appropriate because this is a story about Logan, Wolverine, against the Reavers. This one and the following book, and it is part of a story arc that is very much a part of the movie that just came out, in which Wolverine is fighting the Reavers in the movie Logan. So I think he's one of my favorite characters. This is a very good story arc part of it, enough so that they're actually making it part of the movie. So I thought I'd share that as well. Also, I'm a big, huge SpiderMan fan from Marvel as well, and I have one choice here. But once again, it's outside of the 90s, so I have a second choice with Spider-Man as well that is inside the realm, but I think one of my favorite storylines, and I'm sure Davis Comic Finds will approve, from, I think it's 1987. It is the Kraven's Last Hunt. This particular one is Spider-Man 293. It's part 2 of that, Death of Spider-Man, or so we think. Anyway, this is one of my favorite 90s story arcs, or I should say 80s. If we have to go into the 90s, we see a lot of the symbiotes, Venom, and particularly in this one, Amazing Spider-Man number 361, is the first time we get to see Carnage as well. This little story arc here, Carnage, is also one of my favorites, although they do get a little excessive with the symbiotes in the 90s as well, but it was kind of a change in the storylines, which was kind of nice. And the next one is, I want to actually put this one back up here because MrRigarmotris wanted you to create a story arc for one of your favorite characters from the 90s. He wants to know who would draw it and what would the story be about, what would the, just create your own story. So here's what I'm going to do. One of my favorite characters and stories from the 90s is Sandman with Neil Gaiman. One of the things I collected over the years too are some of these collectible cards, and I think it's a good visual here. Um, here's my idea. In the very beginning of the storyline of Preludes and Nocturnes, the very beginning of Sandman, issue number 4, Morpheus has an encounter with Lucifer in order to get his mask back. Now, I didn't read any comic books beyond, say, 94 with Sandman, and I know there's a lot of stories there. So I don't know if this has been done, but here's my idea. I think that it would be nice to have a story in which Lucifer gets his revenge against Morpheus, in which he is a member of the Endless with his brothers and sisters. You can see them all here. This is, let's see here, we have death, and we have destiny, and we have desire. Down here is despair, delirium, and destruction. Brothers and sisters of Dream. These are all members of the Endless, and there's one additional one on the second page. But here is my idea. That Lucifer gets his revenge against Dream by making him mortal. And he forgets who he is, what he is, and the only way for him to get those memories back is at the hands of his brothers and sisters. He needs to suffer through the worlds and suffering and pain and whatnot of each of his brothers and sisters in order to remember that bit of himself. So he has to suffer at the hands of destiny, at the hands of desire, at the hands of despair, delirium, and destruction. And I see that being as a story arc for each book. So we're looking at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 here. And once he goes through each of those life events, then the last one, of course, is his sister, Death. And instead of actually truly experiencing death, when he does die, he goes into, for the 7th book in the arc, into, instead of what would be anybody's idea of the afterlife, for him it will be his own dream world, in which he'll need to find his own story to find himself. So suffering at the hands of each of his brothers and sisters through 6 stories. 7th story, 7th book would be where he would actually go into his dream world when he dies at the hands of death, and then try to find his story and himself in his dream world, and that would be book 7. That's my idea. I don't know what. I think it would be kind of a neat thing to do. Kind of like the 7 deadly sins is probably what I would even call it. He would have to suffer through the 7 deadly sins to find himself, to become one of the Endless again. Anyway, well, we are about to find out how good my editing skills are. I came to the realization that when I was watching the video that I forgot to answer MrRigarmotris86's question on who would draw this, my idea for a 7-run series of Sandman and the 7 Deadly Sins. Of course, I would have Neil Gaiman do the story, and I would probably look for a combination of 4 artists. To be quite honest, we're talking about a series of comic books that were written 20 years ago. And I'm not current enough on my artists to know who is still living and who is not. And I suppose I could look it up, but ultimately these would be the 4 artists that have all been involved with Sandman that I would like to see involved in creating this story. Would be Mike Dringenberg, Malcolm Jones III, Jill Thompson, and Chris Bacalo. I think would be the artists that I would like to see draw and pencil on these pencil and color on these books. Like I said, with story done by Neil Gaiman. So once again, that is the question I forgot to answer as well. So hopefully this can get inserted well, and then we can get back to Davis Comic Finds answers on his Spider-Man questions. But once again, thank you for watching. On to the next part. Davis Comic Finds. Big, huge Spider-Man fan. I've already shown some Spider-Man books. And in part, they also answer his questions. Davis wants to know, what is your favorite Spider-Man villain? And he said extra points for Kraven. Well, Kraven is one of them. I have a hard time choosing because for me, well, how about this? Kraven is up there, one of my top 2. And Venom and Carnage I think of one, the symbiotes. Both Venom and Carnage, I always tend to think of them as one. They're the symbiotes. Those are what I would consider my top villains for Spider-Man. Now he wants to know what your favorite Amazing Spider-Man cover is. And believe it or not, it's not either of these, neither the Kraven's Last Hunt or the first appearance of Carnage. It is actually this one. It is the Amazing Spider-Man 252, the black suit. It is the introduction of the new black suit Spider-Man before we find out that it's Venom. But in this too, this cover here is really a throwback to the first appearance of Spider-Man in Amazing Fantasy 15. Is that what it is? Yeah. But it's kind of a change in the arc of story of him as well. I don't know. I really like this cover. Like I said, because it is a throwback to that very first image of him. But it is also the change in story of him in the time that I was reading the books. And last, he wanted you to rank the artists for Spider-Man from your least favorite to your greatest or your favorite artist. For me, it's going to be in this order, and it's like I said, it's my own personal preference for the art of these guys. Mike Zeck would be last for me, followed by Ron Frenz. Then it would be Mark Bagley. Then it would be Eric Larson. At number 5. At number 4 would be John Romita Jr. Number 3 would be Steve Ditko. Number 2 for me would be Todd McFarlane. And John Romita would be number 1. I do believe that answers all the questions. If you want to check out the giveaway of both MrRigarmotris and Davis Comic Finds, check out the description down below. I'll leave a link to both their channels. I hope you enjoyed watching my video here, my entry. And thank you for watching.